So here we are, people. We are here today to talk about the Transformers Legacy New Products Reveal panel from San Diego Comic-Con 2022. Much anticipated, whole bunch of stuff we got to talk about. A lot of stuff was revealed today. We're going to have to do these in multiple segments because there's just too much. There is too much. But we're going to break down everything. We have some commentary and some designer notes from the Hasbro crew about these products too, so we'll also be able to talk about that today with each individual item, as well as my own personal commentary on what's going on here and making sense of everything, of all this product that was shown to us today. One unfortunate thing about this panel was most of the product was not shown in alt mode. We only got to see the robot modes of all of these products, but I think that's them just kind of trying to save a little bit of anticipation for people to go down to the Hasbro Pulse booth and check out the product in both designs and take a whole bunch of photos and stuff after the panel. So I'm pretty sure we're going to have a whole bunch of updated photos of all of this stuff and really nice images of the characters and everything for the Saturday night live stream. So be sure to check that out later this week when we do our Saturday night live stream, where we update and do some housekeeping on all the stuff that we discussed throughout the week. So let's jump into that. So they showed us our deluxe classes for Wave 3 Legacy, our Voyager classes for Wave 3 Legacy, and our big leader class Dragon for Wave 3 Legacy. We're going to talk about today the deluxe classes, break down everything that's going on there, and just make sense of everything, because there's some interesting twists and turns. So the first one we're going to talk about, let's talk about Deadend, our brand new limb for our Stunticon set. This isn't a big surprise to us. We had pretty much a good idea in our minds how this was going to look, but we still have a little bit, little pieces here and there that we could discuss that are pleasant surprises. Now, we knew that, they're trying to do super show accurate. We've seen that through our Menasor. We've seen that through how Motor Master is being done, the exoskeleton, how the combined mode is going to look. So we knew that there's this heavy lean on cartoon accuracy. And even the team emphasized that. They were like, yeah, we're going for really a big push for cartoon accuracy with the Motor Master and, of course, more importantly, all the different limbs for Menasor and the Stunticons. So it's still pretty awesome. I think that it actually works out for the best because there's such a strong emphasis on that show accuracy. The individual robots get to have a little more articulation and character, where a lot of times these combiner limbs kind of suffer for that in the past, where when they have to be limbs, they all have to be kind of square and kind of forced into a square box of design that creates limitations. And I think he looks great. I just wish we could see that alt mode, because Deadend turned into a very early 80s Porsche 938, which had pop-up headlights. And again, Porsche. Can't have that Porsche. So what did they do? I'm very curious how that alt mode is going to look. And that interesting Porsche design that he originally had, I want to see how that turned out. Like, how is that going to look? Are they going to have those little round headlights? Are they going to do something completely different that doesn't look like the Porsche? I'm really curious. Another cool thing, though, that I'm pleasantly surprised was that they kept at least his purple visor instead of going with some other color. Now, fun fact about Deadend and, of course, his teammate Wild Rider is both of them, while most Decepticons have red visors or red eyes or whatever in the cartoon, obviously Shockwave is an exception to the rule, and so is the Predaking Predacons. But in general, they always had red eyes or red visors. Swindle's another one, too, that has purple. In the case of Deadend, he has his purple visor here. That's maintained. Some people say, it's because him and Wild Rider were in close contact with the Matrix of Leadership. So that's why Wild Rider has blue eyes and Deadend has purple eyes. It's silly fanon stuff. But again, I'm glad that he has his purple eyes. That's pretty cool. The rest of the robot mode is also the veneering, the detail, the sculpting of the chest and everything. Very true to that Fluoro Deary animation model. So really cool that they did that. I think it looks really good. And again, that emphasis on show accuracy, while it might be negative in some areas, works very well in a positive in terms of these combiner limbs and them being individual characters. And I think that's going to have a lot to do with the fact that they're probably going to do stuff with these limbs in the future that won't be combiner related, but they could use that tooling and that buck, if you will, of the body and do something else with it for other characters, and not be again limited by what would have normally been combiner limbs and how they usually look at the end of the day. So pretty cool. I like it a lot. Next up, we have Crankcase. Now, Crankcase is a partial from the Legacy Skids, so at least they're able to get something out of that Skids mold outside of just basic repaints and stuff like that from a Diaclone nature or whatever. So we got Crankcase out of him. Crankcase is just one of those guys that's like, hey, he had his original Generation 1 Triggercon toy, and then it's nothing but trademark saves for the rest of his existence. Movie characters or like, hey, here's our Classics Crankcase, but it's going to be a repaint of Cybertron Red Alert. Oh, wait, we need more movie toys? Okay, it's not going to be a repaint of Cybertron Red Alert as a Classics version of Crankcase. It's going to be Crankcase, the movie version. And it's, a lot of bad luck with it. If you were a fan of that Triggercon character, you really just had that original toy and that was it. But now we have this one. They're channeling all the details and designs of the original Triggercon, and I think that's fantastic. I think he looks really good. I love what they did with the sculpting here and everything. Again, one of those characters, show me the alt mode, because the Triggercons had those little spring-loaded kind of, blasters and everything. How does that look? How did we transition that to not having gimmicks and stuff, but still having those little weapons and everything? I want to see how they do the Triggercon kind of look. Obviously, it's not going to be a spring-loaded gimmick, but at least like, how do the guns plug on? How does it look? Did they retool something? I want to see how that looks. Very curious, but I think it looks really good. Otherwise, I think it looks fantastic. I think it looks really good. Let's talk about another one that's a big retooling in the future and then some. Let's talk about Deluxe Cass Skullgrin. Now, Skullgrin was a combined effort of Mark Mayer and Yuki-san. This was one that you could clearly see that they're trying to find some kind of balance between the Pretender shell and the inner Pretender robot, because that's always the problem that you kind of encounter when you're dealing with these Pretender characters and not having the Pretender shell gimmick, because you have the outer Pretender shell, which has one aesthetic, you have the robot mode of the inner robot of the Pretender shell, and then you have the alt mode. Now, in this case, Skullgrin had that skull kind of design, very demonic and everything. And then you had an inner robot that was very traditional kind of robot with a purple face that then transformed into, and I'll use air quotes here, a tank. A lot of those larger Pretenders, their alt modes were suggestive at best. It's kind of a submarine. It's kind of a jet. It's kind of a tank. It's kind of a car. It's kind of that. And I love Master Force. Don't get me wrong. All of those Pretender shells are all Master Force related. But let's be real about those alt modes for a second. But so, again, I like what I see here, though. They found this really good balance. If you look at the veneering and the detail of the chest of the robot mode, it's very similar to that of the inner robot Pretender. But when you look at the head sculpt itself, the shoulders, even the belt around the crotch area, very reminiscent of the actual Pretender shell's outer shell monster. So I really like what they do here. If you look at also the details of his legs and, of course, his back, you see that he clearly is going to transform into some kind of tank character. So they managed to find a good balance of all of that. Again, Yuki-san and Mark Mayer worked on that one and found a really good balance. And I really like what I see here. I like what I see. And not to mention, again, what could be done with this afterwards? It looks like there's a lot of tank characters that could be pulled from this. You could probably do a Bludgeon. You could probably do maybe a Warpath, maybe a War for Cybertron Warpath. Who knows? But there's clearly something else here that I'm not seeing that could be done with it. Look, he's a double-barreled tank. Maybe give me an oversized Minicon Duelor. I don't know. It still looks pretty cool. I dig it. I like what I see. And I think it looks really, really, really good. I really, really like what I see here. Next up, let's talk about, and probably the most controversial of the bunch for me. I was looking forward to this guy the most out of all of them because I love the character of Pointblank, especially from how he was in the Headmasters cartoon. Really cool character. But I also kind of understand what they're doing here from a business standpoint. Let's talk about Transformers Legacy Deluxe Cass Autobot Blanker. They obviously aren't calling him Point Blank. They don't have the trademark for it. They're going with his Japanese name, Blanker, instead. And we have our next Target Master. Now, according to Mark here. This was Mark working with Hasui-san on Blanker. Supposedly he's going to have some kind of Minicon accessory, so he will have some kind of Target Master accessory. So that's still pretty cool too. I guess it gives hope to then future characters that are Target Masters if they want to have accessories. Now, how that's going to work, we don't know, but we'll see what happens with that. They call it a Minicon accessory, but obviously it's going to be probably some kind of Target Master. We'll see how they do that. Let's talk about the design choice. So this is where we kind of fall off the rails a little bit. The original 1987 Target Master of Pointblank had a very specific head sculpt with antennas and a mouth and, very human kind of design. And it looked really good. That design was used for the box art. That design was used very much so with the Headmasters anime in 1987 for the TV show in Japan. When this character was brought to the Marvel Comics, something happened along the way that there was a miscommunication and it ended up becoming an animation error and a comic book design error. And they took the body of Pointblank, but somehow in the design process, he ended up with Crosshairs' head, his Target Master wave mate. And we ended up with that design that was used for the Marvel Comics of Pointblank, which has this, again, his body, but this weird kind of amalgam of it's Crosshairs' head sculpt, but it has a little fin on it just to give it a little jazz and flair detail to it to make him look different from the others. And if you actually look at the animation model of Crosshairs in the Headmasters cartoon and, of course, his box art and everything, it's his head sculpt. That's what was put on Pointblank's body ultimately in the end. And this mistake continued onward because it was the basis later on for the 3-episode season 4 Rebirth series of Generation 1, the end of G1 in the Western world. And they used that as kind of the basis also for Pointblank's design. So that mistake kind of continued. And of course, that design, you see it for all of 5 seconds, has one line, and it's not a big deal. But that's the design that they decided to go with this time around. They decided to go with the animation error and the miscommunication error head. Now, I think what's going on here, and this is just my own personal opinion, I think we live in a world today where we already have here's toy accurate, here's show accurate, here's this, here's that. So I think that the legacy one here is going to be the animation error, show accurate, miscommunication comic book version. That's what's going on here, especially has the little fin too and everything. So I think that one is going to represent that. Even the wheel hubs are blue, and the blue wheel hubs match that of the comic book design. Oh, he had the blue wheel hubs where if they would be painted red, it would be matching more with what was going on with the animation model with the Japanese Headmasters cartoon version. So I think they're going for a super animation accurate, Western animation accurate, Marvel comic book accurate Pointblank with that weird head sculpt. And then later on, much like with Beast Wars when we got our toy and show accurate stuff, we're going to get a repaint, retool, brand new head sculpt, and we're going to get toy accurate, Japanese cartoon accurate. Where is it going to show up? Is it going to be maybe a Walgreens exclusive, a Buzzworthy Bumblebee thing? Who knows? But I think that's a way to get 2 sales out of that mold easily. And the trick is, if you're going to do one, do the boring one first. So this one will probably be the least desirable of the 2, so you put it out first because, hey, new mold, new sculpt, people are going to pick it up. And then they'll get the more Japanese toy-accurate one later. Hasbro makes 2 sales. Not to mention, looking at this mold and just between you and me, and the fact that it's going to have a Minicon accessory, like they said, this thing is going to be turned into Armada Blur at some point. I just have a feeling. Just look at it. Just look at it. It's going to totally happen. Give me some incinerator action with his little Minicon. But otherwise, kind of disappointed. I really like the character of Pointblank, but I get a feeling I know what's going on here. This is the first way they're going to sell you the mold. I'll get the better one later, and they're going to make a couple of sales out of it as a result. Either way, it is what it is. Kind of weird, but it's a little bit of a freshness to it. And when you think about it, so you get a weird Western obscure design Target Master, you get a combiner show accurate combiner limb, you get a obscure Triggercon, and then you get at the end of it all a Master Force Pretender shell. A nice little mix of things here. So it's still pretty cool for the Deluxe class Wave 3. We still have much more to talk about, tons of other information to break down. I'll talk to you in the very next segment. It's going to be a busy day at San Diego Comic-Con.